Mm-hmm.
Wasn't it nice for Joe to reflect on our podcast history
Podcasting,
yesterday?
yes.
That was nice.
Now I want a DJ next to you while we do a show.
Yeah, behind me.
Don't remember your dreams, Sigmund.
I know. Believe me, I know.
Live your dreams.
You got a team, here's a word to the wise. You want to dominate your league? Go to football, guys.
Football, I'm living in a fantasy. Football, got everybody mad at me. Football, cause every game I had to win. Football, I gotta be a champion. Football, I'm living in a fantasy.
So many teams are desperate to move up in the 2024 NFL draft. And on Bloom, I think there's a race between two teams. One locally, the Denver Broncos, the other one, the Minnesota Vikings. I believe that the New England Patriots are throwing out everything, basically, to really make sure they're selling number 3. I'm not sure if 3 is available. I'm pretty sure 4 is available. But right now, who wins that race, Elvis? If we got to win that race between
Yeah.
Minnesota and Denver to get to 4.
Well, if we're gonna play, I don't want to say NFL conspiracy theorist, but let's say, well, I'll say this, Cease. Are there things, big things, that have happened in the NFL that you knew about before they happened, but you weren't able to divulge that?
Yes.
So when Minnesota traded for Houston's first round pick, was there already a trade in place? Are they waiting to announce it to create suspense for the draft? So I would say betting markets, because you can bet on everything now. You can bet on the next word I'm going to say. I'll tell you. Oh wait, I already said it. Anyway, I think Minnesota would be the clear choice here because they did something that doesn't make sense unless it's a precursor to a trade. But like you said, Cease, the other variable here is it a trade with New England? Is it a trade with Arizona? Which quarterback is going to be there at number 3? Again, depending on who you have access to, you may already know the answers to this. But for the NFL that has made the NFL draft in Detroit, that's awesome, by the way. That's fantastic. I encourage everybody, if they haven't been to Detroit, that's a good excuse to go to Detroit. If this gets out, then that takes away the suspense because the suspense for the number 1 pick is already over. So they got to keep some suspense for 2, Jayden Daniels, 3, 4, and so on.
Yeah, and I think that trading early, we've got some recent history in terms of what the Sam Darnold trade,
Right.
Trey Lance trade, right?
Yep.
These trades that happen like a month before the draft, they usually don't turn out well. But draft day trades, you have Josh Allen, you have Pat Mahomes. So I don't know if there's any psychology behind that, Bloom, but maybe I should get on the couch and talk about it with you.
Yeah, and I think that it would be great if we did some sort of oral history of the number 3 trade, the one that you mentioned with San Francisco, because immediately we had the water muddied about who's it going to be. Chris Sims says, "Oh, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Mac Jones." Those of us that were watching quarterback tape saying, well, it makes a lot more sense if you're San Francisco giving up those assets and trying to add another dimension to your offense for it to be Trey Lance. And depending on who you ask, there was a power struggle there. And between Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, well, we knew who's going to win that power struggle. So yeah, you're right that usually if you're trading that far in advance, you should have something in mind. But the Darnold trade, the San Francisco trade, now this trade, maybe they don't really know until the pick is on the clock.
Maybe they don't know, or maybe they're just waiting. But you mentioned those 2 first rounders from Minnesota. If you're Arizona, what serves you better? Getting stuff now when you're not going to compete now. Now, I talked to Jonathan Gannon a couple of weeks ago at the NFL coaches breakfast. Really supportive of Kyler Murray. Of course, he kind of has to be. It was my first real time really kind of chopping it up with Gannon, so I don't really know his personality. I like him. I like talking to him, Bloom. But for me, I think if you promise future stuff for Arizona, that's actually more impactful for that team because you get to see if Kyler can do it this year. They have full confidence this year. Yeah, unless it doesn't work out. If you give them future assets, I think that might be better for that team when Gannon tries to find his quarterback if Kyler Murray doesn't make it this year.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things to unpack here. Okay. We've heard a lot of positivity about Kyler Murray coming from Arizona, dating back to last year. And Blake Allen Murphy was one of my favorite people covering a team, one of my favorite people in our football Twitter sandbox. I think that he would say, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but talking to him, he would say, well, they've always liked Kyler. Kyler's always been their guy. But if you're more cynical, he might say, well, he has an untradeable contract and he's not for everybody. If Cliff Kingsbury isn't hired as the coach for Arizona and Josh Rosen isn't a dud, how far does Kyler Murray fall in that draft? Because remember, going into the draft season in January, it wasn't even certain he was going to play football. I think the conventional wisdom was he wasn't going to play football like 4 months before the draft. So Kyler Murray might not be for everybody. We saw with a mobile quarterback. Now, Kyler Murray has more natural passing skills in and outside of structure, I think, than Justin Fields. But again, you saw how the market dried up for Justin Fields. Now, the other side of that is, let's mention the name Monty Ossenfort, because what Ossenfort was able to do last year was trade down, recoup an extra first-round pick, which more than anyone thought. Good job, Texans. And then trade back up to get Paris Johnson, their guy, their offensive tackle. So it's not difficult to picture Arizona doing that again. In fact, it might become conventional wisdom by the time we get to draft night. So these two stories fit together, right? Minnesota or Denver trading up to number 4 for J.J. McCarthy. And I think they're sitting, 11 and 12.
Mhm.
And then one maybe trading up with the Chargers, who want an offensive tackle. And again, when teams quote unquote telegraph picks, sometimes they really do telegraph picks.
Mhm.
See, at what point were we certain the Steelers were taking Najee Harris? Like a month before the draft?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether it's a good pick or it's the pick you want them to make. Teams do telegraph picks. And the Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, have been telegraphing that they're going to take an offensive tackle. And yes, this is a good draft to take a wide receiver, but yes, this is also a good draft to take an offensive tackle. And you can trade down to 11 or 12 and still get one of your top offensive tackles. You probably cannot get one of the top 3 wide receivers at 11 or 12. So we put all these pieces together, and Arizona can get both seats. They can get an extra first-round pick next year and still get, I think it's Marvin Harrison Jr. at 5 now. Honestly, I think that Malik Neighbors may end up going ahead of Marvin Harrison. Now, if it's J.J. McCarthy at 4, then maybe it's Malik Neighbors at 5. It's going to be really interesting to see which team makes the choice on wide receiver 1 and which one they make, because it's clearly in question. And it's going to show you about what they value at receiver. And after seeing what DeAndre Hopkins did with Kyler Murray, I think Marvin Harrison would be the guy for them.
Yeah. And John McGannon wouldn't give it up when I asked him about the type of wide receiver. I didn't mention specifics. And I think I've mentioned it before, Bloom. Sorry, I talk a lot, but you could trade back to 12 with Denver and then move back up a little bit for Roma Dunze, who has
Sure.
Larry Fitzgerald vibes, which
Mhm.
would be great. And the thing with compromise, if you will, right? And you mentioned Kyle and John Lynch. Well, we know who won that one. If Kyle wanted Mac Jones and John Lynch wanted Trey Lance, we know who won that one. There was no compromise there. And I think of Denver, and you have George Payton who wants more picks and wants to move back, and you have Sean Payton who wants to move up. We know who's going to win that battle. It's just a matter of when it happens. And honestly, as we sit here on April 9th, I'm surprised it hasn't happened.
Right. And it may have already happened. This is again where the tinfoil hat goes on, where things have already happened, or things are already in place, or discussions have already taken place that laid the groundwork for things. But we have to remember, this is now a big time made for TV event during the beginning of the playoff season or the end of the regular season for the NBA, for the NHL. Major League Baseball is taking off. The Padres were down 8-0 and won last night, by the way. El Nino, Fernando Tatis. And the NFL draft still grabs all the headlines. It's still the biggest story. So the NFL is going to do their part by keeping us in suspense. But the good organizations are not waiting until they're on the clock to at least lay the groundwork, at least put out the feelers. And I think that we see that Monty Ossenfort is, I think, the new king of playing the draft and managing the draft the way that one of us would.
Yeah, and go for it, man. That's makes it fun and exciting. Exciting and new. I want to sing the Love Boat theme, but Bloom,
Mm-hmm.
that's a pretty dated reference now. Anyway, let's talk Buffalo. You talk about good teams with a bad head coach. In my opinion, Sean McDermott should have been fired. It seems like they're telegraphing a Trey Benson pick. Like they're telegraphing running back,
Right.
probably second round. There's not going to be a first round running back in my opinion, but like, okay, Buffalo. And just as soon as we wrapped up last week's show, like then the Stephon Diggs thing happened. So yeah, we got some stuff to talk about with Buffalo and how they're going to try to take the ball out of Josh's hands, and I don't think that's. Listen, you have to have balance, Danielson. You have to have both. And yeah, Josh doesn't need to play hero ball all the time, but you don't need to take the ball away from him. And I think McDermott, in his last ditch effort to kind of keep his job, is going to try to like limit Allen and let's just run the ball. And I don't think that'll work.
I don't think it will work. But look, you flip one of any number of plays against the Chiefs, the Super Bowl champion Chiefs, and they would have beaten them, right? So they weren't that far from winning the Super Bowl last year. With Stephon Diggs, remember the drop? Oh, that's your last memory of Stephon Diggs as a Bill. Josh Allen made the plays. And I do think that from a psychological standpoint, you want Josh Allen to feel like it's not on him. And when you're playing inferior teams, as we saw the Joe Brady Bills do, you can run the ball more. You can, because look, who are the signature targets in this offense now? James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir. Now, we want to get into some draft. What's going to happen? Some people have tossed out the possibility of the Bills making a Julio Jones type trade, right? 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a fourth to move up and get one of these top 3 receivers, because there's your instant impact. Like we talk about with Arizona, that's having your cake and eating it, right? That's for the future and for the present. That's you're in a Super Bowl window, but you're also replacing Stephon Diggs, who wanted to get out of town. And hey, he got $40 million plus for this year. So you talk about incentivizing being a PITA. Sorry, Joe. Yeah, Stephon Diggs, because he's a master class in that. And how many, the Texans, you got to love, one of the funniest postscripts to the Texans trade was they just voided the rest of his contract. We're not going to, let's just cut to the chase. You're only going to be with us for this year.
Yes.
But actually, I see it. There's a lot to cover with this Diggs trade and the repercussions and the fallouts, and then trying to mind read, and what is Nick Caserio thinking here? What is Brandon Beane thinking here? But from the Texans standpoint, it is defensible. Even though they're giving up a late second round pick, they're not really giving up a late or an earlier mid second round pick because it's Minnesota's second round pick. They really only gave up a move down from 23 to 42. And we know Nick Caserio, coming from the Patriots school of drafting. Okay, Cecil, the players that are available at 23 and the players that are available at 42, how many spots do you think he has to move down on his board when he's making the pick?
Yeah, I mean, it's virtually
3,
identical.
4, maybe even the same guy.
Mhm.
It's certainly possible that the guy they take at 42 is the guy that they would have taken at 23. And that's what they gave up to get Stephon Diggs. Well, that's nothing. And they got some late round picks back. So you get some darts in addition to getting Stephon Diggs. And what a wonderful announcement to your fan base, to your team. We're going for it this year.
Mhm.
This is the year right now. And of course, Stephon Diggs with his contract voided. And look, those are $18 million contract years, $19 million contract years, which is nothing to sneeze at. But at the same time, if Stephon Diggs shows it wasn't me, it was them, he's going to get more than $18 or $19 million in the open market. So everybody's happy. Everybody's incentivized. But for the Bills, I think the question becomes, do you move up to take a wide receiver? Do you take a wide receiver in the first and the second? As you said, Cecil, maybe they're looking at someone to team with James Cook in the second. So that makes it very interesting, the conversation we were having about Arizona. Well, what do you value in a wide receiver now? Because somebody like a Ladd McConkey doesn't really make a lot of sense there. Maybe Xavier Worthy makes more sense. A.D. Mitchell makes more sense. You got to get an outside wide receiver. I don't know that you're going to have that classic X type there in the late first round, but I do think you're going to have somebody who brings the deep passing game into play. And as always, we love the draft because teams can't lie. They're going to show you what they think about what they've got and what they think they need to take the next step.
Why doesn't Buffalo think higher of James Cook then? He
I
could
don't
do
know.
what Thurman did.
Absolutely. He was doing it. He was
could do
practically
it.
doing it in the second half of the year
I
last year.
can't stand when a back is like around 195 pounds or whatever, and they're like, you just can't give it to him. What? Defenders are lighter and attack and aggressive more, but like Yes, yeah, give him 400 touches, and that includes receptions for the rule of
Sure.
380 or whatever the hell that one number was, Bloom. But it's like,
Yeah.
I feel in a different way because Cook's more explosive than Devin Singletary, but it's like Buffalo gets these backs and they're like, nah,
Yeah.
we could use him, but nah, let's not use him.
Yeah. What happened? If you're going to actually point fingers or ask questions, why is it that they spent third round picks on Zach Moss and Devin Singletary, and both of them play their best football after they were shipped out? Well, Moss's case shipped out. Singletary, they didn't keep him. So what's wrong, Buffalo? Maybe that's part of the overcompensation here by focusing on the running game, by trying to redo that. Maybe it's 2 second-round picks now instead of 2 third-round picks. And certainly, if and when it's Trey Benson or whoever becomes the Buffalo Bill, I'm not going to be buying the guy they drafted. I'm going to be buying James Cook.
Yeah, be buying the guy they should be using more. We'll see if they learn. But I love how the draft exposes everything on your roster.
Jerry Jones is bored.
Yeah, including a team that could surprise. I know everyone's thinking about Dak Prescott. Like, what's going to happen with Dak? Like, they'll draft Shadur next year. That's my crazy, way too early thing. Is like Jerry Jones will draft Shadur, probably make Dion an offensive coach or something something. But anyway, like surprises, shock, and awe. Not really. I just need to know who's going at 3 because I don't believe New England. I don't believe them at all. I think 3's available, but now I've heard they will take Drake May. I'll tell you off air who that came from. Pretty significant. But yeah, they will take Drake May at 3. I was like, okay, but they weren't saying that in January. So again, Bloom, it's April and I don't trust anybody.
Yeah, and Jared Mayo is also continuously laying the groundwork. We don't have to get the quarterback right away. It's the Matt Waldman school. Don't force the pick, okay?
Right.
It's okay. Get good players. Get good players, and when the quarterback presents himself, then you make the pick. And the Patriots are hopefully for them in a very unique position here where they are holding the number 3 pick, but the number 3 pick this year has the value that the number 1 pick has most years. So whether it's Drake May or Jayden Daniels or Jayden McCarthy, I think that if I had to guess on a big reveal, circling all the way back to the Minnesota or Denver question, I think the big reveal is the trade that has already been done, but we have to keep suspense, is that Minnesota moves up to number 3 for Drake May. And New England is doing a long-term rebuild. And look, if you're Jared Mayo, because we talked about this with the GMs, we talked about this with Philadelphia and the Jets, and how the Philadelphia was able to get a younger edge rusher and a draft pick for Hassan Reddick, a guy they didn't even really want to keep because the Jets are in complete panic mode. We have to win with Aaron Rodgers this year. And Joe Douglas does not have job security. Howie Roseman does. Jared Mayo has job security. And Jared Mayo can afford to make the more conservative move, trade down, and let's see how things shake out. Because if you build a good team, Russell Wilson in Seattle, if you build a good team around your quarterback, then you don't have to force a pick early in the first round.
Yeah, and then when you get your guy, you can roll and you can go. Not everyone will be as lucky as Houston.
No.
Wasn't that long ago when the Texans were like, what are they doing? Their front office is in shambles, and now they're going for it, man.
Karma. It's karma because they took responsibility for their role in what happened with Deshaun Watson. Good karma.
Very good. Very good. Awesome. Yeah, the draft will be here before you know it. We'll be covering it for you at footballguys.com. And of course, the draft, I think it is the day of the draft, is when our free daily newsletter begins again. So make sure to sign up for that. It's free to your inbox every single day from the draft all the way to the Super Bowl. Takes written by me, Sigmund, Bob Harris, of course, Joe Bryant there as well. So check that out and get our free rookie draft guide available at footballguys.com right now. Bloom, I hope no other trades go down.
Right.
Because we'll pre-record the show on Thursday.
Right. Yeah, I'm not going to, I think I said last week, 0.001%. I'm not going to say 0.001% chance of anything because I don't want to make it happen. The clips of weird stuff's going on.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird out there. Everyone stay healthy. I'll say the thing at the end, but anyway. How are you, Bloom? Are you okay? How's it going?
Yeah, I'm getting over the sinus thing. So one of the things about being sick that eventually ends up being a blessing is it makes you appreciate just your regular baseline, man. And especially as we're over the hill. When I was a kid, I used to see over the hill stuff like in the Hallmark store. I didn't understand over the hill. Now I understand, but the going does get a little easier when you're going downhill, but you appreciate more. And maybe you don't have everything you had. Youth is wasted on the young, but you do appreciate what you have. And I hope that we help people do that because we appreciate what we have with this amazing audience and opportunity to serve them.
I appreciate your dream that you had where we were doing a
Yeah.
show and I was mad because the DJ was next to you. That does sound. You're so kind, Bloom.
Yeah.
You're so kind because I can be a little gritchy. Where's your sound levels at?
76. Always Spirit of 76.
Spirit of 76. All right. There we go. That's a wrap for today's program. He is Sigmund Bloom. Follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. I am at Cecil Lammey saying thanks for watching, everyone. Peace. Stay tuned. And as always, stay frosty.